What would you say if I asked you to throw away all the money you have in your wallet right now? Sounds pretty crazy, right? Oddly enough, many people equate renting to doing this exact thing. I'm sure you've had someone tell you before that renting is a waste of money and that you're only paying down someone else's mortgage when you could be paying down your own. Is this true? Well, you're about to find out as I go over the truth as to whether or not renting is a waste of money. As human beings, we all have three things in common. The first is that we all must eat to keep ourselves alive. And yes, sometimes that includes eating one too many plates at your favourite all-you-can-eat buffet. The second thing we have in common is that we all yell between 4 and 10 curse words every time we stub our toe against the leg of our beds. And the final thing we have in common is that we all require the basic need of shelter. Now, I can't control how much you eat when you go out or stop you from making clumsy mistakes, but I can give you some guidance around making housing decisions, especially amidst the widespread notion that renting is a waste of money. If you grew up with a similar financial upbringing as myself, you were probably told that renting is a waste of money and that no one of the rites of passage into adulthood is owning your own home. Now, perhaps I fell for this commonly shared advice, given that I now own my own home, but just because I do doesn't mean that renting is a waste of money. In fact, I rented in the past, and let me tell you that my experience renting certainly made me question whether renting is as bad as people say. But before I get into why renting was better than I ever expected it to be, I think it's worth diving into why people believe that buying is better than renting so we can better understand the root of this commonly shared financial advice. If you ask me, there are three primary reasons why most people still hold buying in a higher regard than renting, with the first being the commonly held notion that when you rent, you are making someone else rich. It's true that when you're renting, you are technically paying down the mortgage on someone else's property rather than paying down your own mortgage instead. If you've heard this argument before, gently tap the like button below so we can see how far spread the notion truly has gotten. This may in fact be the most common argument people have when vouching for buying over renting, but just because you are making debt payments on someone else's behalf doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. In fact, you do this every day when you go to work. As an employee, you aren't building your own business, but instead are working to build up the company you work for in exchange for money. The same goes for renting, but instead of receiving money, you're receiving shelter instead. The second reason people think buying is better than renting is because you are acquiring an asset through home ownership, whereas when you rent, you are simply taking on another expense. Again, this is true, but a home is an asset that comes with many costs, and as such, it's not as much of a free ride as many people perceive it to be. Just ask your neighbour who just had to put on a new roof or change their furnace system. They will probably tell you that owning a home isn't as great as many people make it out to be. The final reason that people see buying a home as a wiser financial decision than renting is because that's all they've been hearing for years, and as such they end up maintaining the same financial perspective as those who came before them. Keep in mind that what worked before in the past doesn't always make for the best decision in the present. Examples of this include the degradation of value in college degrees 50 years ago compared to now, and how you used to actually make some money keeping your money in the bank, whereas now you'll end up collecting more dust than you will interest. As you're probably starting to see, at its foundation, the concept that owning a home is preferable to renting one starts to crumble as we look a little closer into this common piece of financial advice. Given that we are talking a more reality-based view of the buying versus renting debate, let's talk about the current state of renting, because let me tell you, it's changed a lot in the last 2 decades. For starters, in 2021, American home ownership rates dropped by 3.7%. Moreover, since 2004, home ownership has declined by upwards of 5% before seeing a slight uptick in buying as of 2016. Chances are good that these statistics don't surprise you one bit. I mean, if you look at the current prices of homes across North America, it's no wonder that people are choosing to rent rather than buy. Now, I say choosing, but the reality is that many people are relegated into renting simply because accumulating the money for a down payment is becoming harder by the day. Not only are housing prices skyrocketing, but wages are moving as slow as your grandmother after hip surgery, so most people right now are finding it very hard to join the ranks of their home-owning friends. However, is this necessarily a bad thing? As someone who's rented before, I can tell you that renting gets a bad rep. In fact, I would say that renting has a ton of benefits that owning a home will never provide, which is why I think that people should reconsider adopting the notion that renting is a waste of money. However, don't just take my word for it. Let's get into why those benefits are, so that hopefully you can create your own perception of whether it's better to rent or buy. One of the obvious differences, which many see as a benefit of renting versus buying, is not needing a down payment. Let's face it, these days, if you are buying a single-family home in a large city, you're probably paying at least $500,000 for your home. This means that based on a 20% down payment, you would need $100,000. This doesn't even include the cash you'll need to furnish the place, do a few renovations and still have money set aside in case of emergency. All in, let's put this number at $150,000. I don't know about you, but it took me the first 25 years of my life to save up that amount of money, and I would guess that there are people double my age who are still far from accumulating this large of a savings nest egg. In fact, if you want to learn the strategies I used to save up over $100,000 by 25, then hit that subscribe button below, because I'll be talking more about them in my upcoming videos. Fortunately, with renting, a first and last is all you need, which actually presents you with an interesting financial situation. You see, given that you aren't tying up your money into a home, you can put that money into higher yielding assets like stocks, your business, or even into your education. Many people overlook the opportunity cost of buying a home, but I know you are more financially aware than that. The second benefit of renting is the flexibility it offers. Ask most of the girls I've actually dated in the past, and they will agree that I'm not the best with commitment. Unfortunately, if you're the same, then renting is there to meet your needs. In the world we live in today, opportunities are all around us. One day we might be working in a job we hate, and the next we're living halfway across the world doing work we love. The trouble is, going after these promising adventures can often be hampered by our current living situations, and renting partly solves this problem. It's much easier to let your lease expire or even break your lease than it is to box up your home and try to sell it, especially when the market is in a slump. Therefore, if lifestyle flexibility is something you value, then renting may be for you. Since you've made it this far, let me now share with you the final benefit of renting, and the one I think is by far and away the best of them all. Have you ever been at the mall and seen a parent dealing with their child who was throwing the temper tantrum of a lifetime? I think we all have, and have had that same thought that we are glad that wasn't us having to deal with that situation. Well, when you rent, you get to feel that same sense of relief all the time. I know in my own experience, the greatest part of renting was not having to deal with anything housing related. If my front door didn't close properly, I called my landlord. When my smoke detector wouldn't stop beeping at 2 a.m, I called my landlord. Simply put, for those who value convenience, you simply can't beat the renting lifestyle. However, this wouldn't be a balanced discussion without highlighting some of the downsides of renting, so let me share a couple that I think are the most detrimental right now. The first downside of renting is the lack of autonomy that comes with it. You see, as a renter, you are always under the purview of the person who owns the home. Now, if you have a good landlord, this shouldn't be much of an issue. However, it's like having a boss. Some will be better than others. Unfortunately, when you do have a less than ideal landlord, they can make your life a living hell by being overly demanding or being extremely restrictive in what you can do with your living quarters. The other downside of renting is housing insecurity. Unlike when you buy a home and have the peace of mind knowing that you can stay in the home for as long as you want, when you rent, there is always the chance that your landlord will approach you one day asking you to move out. This is a reality of renting that many people struggle with because, let's face it, moving is a pain in the arse, and no one wants to be scanning Craigslist ads for places to live after having been asked to leave their current accommodations. So as you can see, like most things in life, neither owning a home or renting are perfect. Both have their pros and cons if you ask me. The decision to rent or buy should not be based on outdated financial wisdom, but instead based on your individual needs as a person. As such, who is renting probably right for? If I had to build a profile of the ideal renter, it would be the following. First, this person would be someone who is either lacking the capital needed to buy a home or someone who is acutely aware of the opportunity costs of owning a home and who wants to use their money to make the most amount of returns possible. Moreover, this ideal renter would be someone who is either still deciding where they want to live long term or who wants to spend time traveling now and will settle down later in life. The final trait of someone who is perfect for renting are those who hold convenience in high regard. If you cringe at the thought of mowing your own lawn or shoveling your own snow, then the decision has already been made for you that you should be renting instead of buying. At the end of the day, renting isn't a waste of money. It's a use of money in the same way that going out for dinner or going on vacation is. However, on the contrary, purchasing a home is undoubtedly one of the best ways to build long-term wealth, and in this next video, I will share a step-by-step approach that anyone can use to acquire a property and use it to improve their financial life forever.